Okay, hello and welcome to the Montgomery County Master Gardener's class on rainwater harvesting. My name is Mike Mendeck. I'll be your instructor for today's class. If you have questions, please give them to your class coordinator and ask them to send the questions to a person, Kim Pierce. She is at our Montgomery County Extension office. She will be sure that we get those questions and we'll get back to you as soon as we have the answers for you. I joined the Master Gardener program in 2007 and went through their Texas Master Gardener training and certification in 2008. Shortly after that, I also went through the training for the ARCSA group, which is the American Rainwater Catchment Systems Association. Kind of lengthy title, and that's why we prefer ARCSA. Anyway, it's a good group. They work at teaching people about rainwater harvesting. You know, it's not something new. It's been around for an awfully long time. But we need to make sure that people are doing it correctly so they don't endanger themselves or their families or other people in the community. And so the ARCSA program teaches people how to do it responsibly and also guides people that are in government and business on how they can help move this along and save money for themselves and save resources for our population. So with that, one more thing on handouts. We want to make sure that you have the handout on the self-cleaning overflow. There are several. It should have a package or a PDF of handouts that you have. One of those will be a blow-up of a blue rain barrel and a detail showing the individual parts necessary for making it self-cleaning. It shows them fitted roughly in the position they're going to be in, how they fit together. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And one of the YouTube videos that's linked here that you can go to, well, actually on your handout or in your PDF files. You can go to that and learn more about the self-cleaning overflow. It's quite beneficial. I have that at our house as well, and it's really helpful. Let's see, with that, I think we'll get started. I did mention that this has been around for a long time. It's nothing new about this. We do want to make sure it's done properly, though. And with that, I'm going to go to a shared screen. You won't see me except for a little photograph or video on the right side or on one side or the other, depending on where it decides to go. And with that, you're going to see PowerPoint slides. We try to make these as interesting as we can. We know that sometimes it's kind of boring, but we don't have a song and dance associated with this, but it is really important, and hopefully this will ease your understanding and help you think of the questions that you want to ask or that you want to learn more about. And with that, let's get started. These are the same PowerPoint slides I use in teaching the class. I've generalized some of them so that they suit all of the counties that we're liable to have in our area. So this same video can be used by any one of them, from Houston to Leon County to San Jacinto to Montgomery and beyond, also Waller and Walker if they're interested in doing it. So with that, I'm going to go to the shared screen, and we're going to go to up here for the PowerPoint. I like to start with this slide because it shows photographs of all of our projects that we have at the Extension office. Starting with the upper right corner, we have a 55-gallon wildlife watering station. We have actually two of these. One is for the bee areas and one's for the birds and also bees if they're so inclined, and butterflies and other animals if they can get up to the bird bath. The height of it's about 3 feet high. We also have a solar gravity panel that's right here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Adaptive garden. This is our largest rain barrel, this rain tank, I should say. 2,500 gallons. It's right next to the Extension office. This is our largest rainwater harvesting system. We have 4 tanks set up, communicating together. They're 2,000 gallons each, so we're looking at a total of 8,000 gallons. We have two tanks set up for the Earthkind garden, 1 small tank for the aquaponics, 300 gallons. And total, we have 17,000 gallons of water that we can store at the Extension. Michael Potter is our horticultural agent, and he's been here for a number of years. He knows the area. He's actually a specialist in turf building. So you will have seen him, if not now or before this. You'll see him probably soon in the next year on talking about turf grasses. He's very knowledgeable and excellent with that. We have several websites that you can look at that have a lot of information on them and updates. We are located, the office is located north of Conroe. east of I-45. The easiest way to get to it is take 3083 over to Airport Road and then turn north, and we're just off that intersection on the right side or the east side. We're located here. Lone Star Airport is just north of us on the same side of the road, and right across the street from us is the Lone Star Convention Center. Our hours of operation for our office is Monday through Friday, and also for the gardens, from 8 a.m. to noon and from 1 to 5 p.m. We do have quite a few activities out here, and we recommend that you come out to our website, mcmga.com, to find out when these are scheduled and what's going on. Particularly with the COVID crisis going on, the COVID pandemic, things have changed. We're doing a virtual plant sale where we'll show you the plants and you can pick and select and fill out an order form, and we'll meet you there in the parking area and they'll load it for you. And it's done with minimal contact, so we're trying to keep our customers safe for obviously good reasons. Our public are our customers, and we're trying to also be able to answer questions and move from there. This map shows our gardens, and this is also in one of the handouts. The red dots are rain barrel or rain tanks. If there's an A in the middle of the red dot, that indicates it's an animal wildlife watering station. And take a look at these. When we have an open gardens day, once in the fall and once in the spring, you're welcome to come out and visit with the folks. We'll have specialists out there for each of these areas and activities, and you're welcome to ask questions, bring some photographs, bring your cell phone photographs of problem areas, and we'll be glad to help you work with them. This is also our extension office right here. They have about 5 acres, and they very generously let us use about 3 acres for our demonstration gardens. We use these demonstration gardens for teaching the public, getting photographs such as you're going to see today, and also for having open garden days. And people can come out anytime we're open, and they're welcome to tour through here and look at everything, take photographs. Please don't take anything apart. And we ask that you not pick anything or disturb the plants, because we're using those in a lot of tests. We may be testing anything from pesticides to fertilizers or planting techniques or types of plants, hybrids and things like that. And for that, we need to know what the yield is. And if you pick the fruit or the vegetable, then we're missing that from our database that we can use to then go back into teaching the public. Today we're going to cover 2 parts. Part 1 is the general information, passive and active rainwater harvesting. Part 2 is uses of rainwater, components, and maintenance. We also will talk about rain barrels off and on, and for that purpose, we're not going to have a specific section, but you'll hear us refer to them and point to them and talk about them. You also have these YouTube videos that you can click on. If you have this on a PDF file, you can click on it and it'll take you to these. This is by Texas A&M, just over in Bryan College Station, and you'll see 2 people build a rain barrel from basically a surplus food barrel, and they do a good job with it. It's not any different than what you'll see in these photographs coming up. We also have 2 videos on rainwater harvesting that were shot at the extension office. One is on the self-cleaning rain barrel, part 1, and the other is on more on rainwater harvesting and a little bit on drip irrigation. And then once you get the rain barrels home, whether you're buying them or building them yourself, once you have them, it's how to connect them safely to your downspout and actually connect and make use of the water there. These are 2 excellent YouTube videos for that purpose. Key publications, I will recommend you download these 2 as soon as you can. Rainwater Harvesting by Texas A&M and Texas Rainwater Harvesting Manual, 3rd edition. That's used worldwide. Both of these are excellent. They will they'll answer probably 85 to 90% of your questions. If you want more information than what they're showing in these publications, then come on down here to the Harvest H2O website, go out to that, take a look at that, and go ahead and search his website for whatever it is you're looking for, whether it's rain gutters, the size of them, the optimal size for rain gutters, depending on what type of flow you have and rainfall, to looking at sanitizing it for in-home use. TCEQ is another good one, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Their section on rainwater harvesting talks about sanitizing rainwater, downloading publications, treatment for domestic use. This is all according to our Texas guidelines. Now we're going to get into it. Okay, most of you know we've got a lot of salt water around, but this map, this pie chart shows all of the water on the surface of the earth, how it's split up. And you're right, most of it is salt water. 97% of our water on the surface is salt water. 2% is glacial and polar ice, and only 1% is fresh water that we can use for drinking once we've sanitized it. With just only 1%, I mean, that's what we use for growing our plants. That's what we use for animals, ourselves, and a lot of other uses, swimming pools. So how is it that only 1% is available, but we make so much use of it? Well, we also have the world's best, literally the world's best recycling program, and it's called the hydrologic cycle. It is amazing. It is really good. Water evaporates off the surface of the oceans, off the plants, off the soil, off the lakes, off the streams and rivers, off the trees. And just once the water vapor leaves the surfaces, it is just water vapor. That's all it is. There are no impurities, no salts, nothing else. It's just water vapor, and it floats around in the air. And if the temperature and pressure conditions get low enough, then you have a fog. If you're up high enough, you get clouds. So what people do is what this does is it floats up and will shift around until the temperature and pressure conditions get low enough, and it falls as rain. And when it falls, it might have a little bit of dust in it, but it's very clean. It's very pure. Just water vapor going to water H2O. When it hits the ground, it changes. It picks up impurities. It filters into the ground. It will go deepest into the ground to our groundwater replenishment programs. Not that there are programs that we have, but just naturally occurring. It also is used in the soil for watering trees and plants. It may go into surface runoff into lakes or into streams. Eventually, it will make its way to the ocean or make its way to an inland lake, a large lake. And some of those you've heard about, salt lakes and in lakes in Desert Valley and places like that. They are there. And that high evaporation rate will make them very saline. But the water that comes off of those also leaves all the salts behind, and that's how those lakes become salty. So with that, we're very interested in, with that water use or with that water supply, we want to make sure we don't use too much, because each area gets a certain amount of water, and you'll see a little bit more about that. But that water is used for population primarily, as well, and for animals, for plants, for fish, you name it. So we're very interested in what our public is doing. And as you can see from this map, this is a census map. And as people are moving into an area, more than 30,000 in 8 years, from 2010 to 2018, it goes purple. As it goes less, as people leave the area, less than 1,500, it goes to brown, or kind of a beige colored. And so as you can see, the people are moving from the northeast to the south and to the west. And in fact, in Texas, it's very easy to see what's happening here. Around Harris County and Houston, we've got a bunch of counties here, including Montgomery County, Fort Bend County. And around San Antonio and Austin, Texas, we have another population center that's increasing, tremendous amount. Around Dallas-Fort Worth area, we've got another group. This is Midland, Texas, and this is El Paso. They're also rapid growers. Now, this doesn't tell the whole story, because this is only saying that if you have population over 30,000 people, it's this dark plum or purple color. And here you have the same numbers, but we're talking about a much larger number in these small areas here than in these bigger areas here, because while they have this more than this going into these counties, they have a lot fewer people than the counties that in certain areas of the population of the United States. So with that, we're going to look at, if you look at all of the counties, and this is a county map. If you look at all the counties and you say, okay, for the counties over 500,000 people in population, which ones are the most rapidly growing? Because those are the ones where people are going to be using the most water, or the most natural resources for that matter. And that's what we did. We looked at the top 20 counties here, and you can see of the top 20 counties, of the top 7 counties, 6 of those are in Texas. And we're looking at almost a 40% increase in change from 2010 to 2018. Huge numbers, huge numbers. We're looking at thousands, hundreds and thousands of people, and that makes a difference. So the state of Texas is concerned that, are we going to have enough water to make this demand? And for that, they looked at a general map of trends. And for every 10 years in Texas, appears we're gaining about 5 million people. And that's a lot of people. And so that makes us worried. And because they also, the United States Geological Survey, also known as the USGS, they've done, they're a scientific group of people, of geologists and earth scientists, and they've measured the groundwater decline of our aquifer, the water in your water well, if you will. And basically, from 1950 to 2000, it dropped 200 feet. In the next 13 years to 2013, it dropped another 200 feet. It just don't, but only over 13 years, not 50 years. So the rate of use and decline is increasing. That also means that because it's declining that rapidly, we're using a lot more water out of the aquifer or groundwater system than is being replenished. And that has people concerned. And that is why they've asked, that's why Houston area has gone to, instead of being 100% groundwater, they've gone to almost 90% lake water and stream water and only 10% groundwater. And in Montgomery County, we've gone from 100% groundwater to now about 70% groundwater. Water is being used from Lake Conroe for the Woodlands area and also for Conroe area. So are we able to meet the demand? Well, the state of Texas divided the counties up into groups, and each group has a designation and their own challenges. They looked at the state asked these groups of counties, this is the demand for water, and this is your current supply. And you can see as the projection goes, as the increase in population, what happens to the decline or what happens to the supply. And you can see the supply is declining as population increases. So they asked them to look at it to identify, can they meet the demand? How much is that's going to cost? And how are they going to do that? So that's what they did. And the good news is that there is potential to increase 9 million acre feet. That'll boost it up above this number. So that works good. And they're going to do this by surface and groundwater management programs, municipal and irrigation water conservation programs, water reuse. Desalination is good to use. I mean, it is available, but it's very expensive. Plus you have the byproduct of separating out the impurities from water as you make it pure to use. And that is a hazardous waste in itself, and it has to be discarded according to EPA guidelines, and that's expensive. So desalination is the minimum, as the last one you want to go to. The bad news is it's going to cost $63 billion. Now, this is the number they came up with about 10 years ago. I have no doubt in my mind that's increased, but we don't know by how much because I've not seen an update on that. So as residents, what can we do? Well, we can look at water conservation. That's stopping leaks, install low-volume toilets, shower heads, and faucets, use water-efficient appliances, reduce water use for irrigation. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. If not today, then hopefully soon you'll have drip irrigation classes. And then also we look at alternate water sources, gray water, condensation recovery, which would be condensation coming off your air conditioning system. You can use that. That's a form of gray water. It's not sanitized for drinking, but you can use it for plants. The desalination we talked about already, and last, rainwater harvesting, which is something just about all of us can do. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning or today. So what is it? We're talking about collecting or directing rainwater for use in a variety of applications in place of municipal water. One, for the benefits, it conserves our water resources for our future, for our kids. Reduces pollution, erosion, and flooding. That's always important. The more we pollute, erode, and flood, the bigger our challenges become. Provides better quality water for our plants and fish. By reducing the amount of pollution and erosion, we're making things better for our plants and fish. And if we use it in place of watering or putting in our fish ponds, it's municipal water for that, it's beneficial. Better, no, there's no chlorine in it, so it's better for the plants and fish. Provides a water source during restrictions, of course. You want to be able to, you can take water that's in a tank used for irrigation, you can take that and put it in your toilet for flushing, put it in the area that's behind the toilet, that big reservoir, and don't use it for drinking or anything else other than that. Provides a better use of a valuable resource than letting it run into the storm drains or ditches. That's obvious. Currently, this saves a little money on our water bills, but it will save a lot in the future. And that's something that, while we don't really see it, we have seen our water prices go up. I see that at least in Montgomery County, they're also adding a lot of other attachment or riders into this for like sanitation and for like garbage pickup and things like that. So it's not all just water supply, it's also a lot of other things going into it. So do we have enough water to make this worthwhile, to rainwater to do this? Well, if we look at a map of Texas that's divided up by inches of rainfall per year, from west to east, you can see that we're red and hot here in the west at 12 inches of rain per year. We're blue and go at 60 inches of rain per year on average to the east. Amazing amounts of rain just in one state. I was very impressed. I also show Centerville, the cities of Centerville, Conroe, and Cold Spring on here. We're going to take a little bit closer look, next slide, at their rainfall in these areas. You can see that they're looking at 42 inches for Centerville, about 48 inches for Conroe, and about 52 inches for Cold Spring. Now, are those, while this is increasing, is the pattern the same, or is it changing, or is it different? Can we use the plans that we use for Centerville also for Cold Spring, but we just move up, bump up the numbers for it? We'll see. And in fact, you can see this. A couple things to point out. One, there's water that comes in on average of every month. That is particularly important. There are areas that are in, you would think in California, in water-rich areas, for example, in the northern California area around San Francisco. You know, we hear about windy, rainy cities, but Berkeley, California, where the University of California is, from May, June, July, August, September, there's just about zero rainfall. There may be a trace of rainfall in May and September, but not much more than that. It's considered a drought condition. Here we have, even though we're hotter, average temperature is higher, we also have more water, a lot more water. And in fact, and we also see, even though we're like 70 miles away and 28 miles from other cities, from Cold Spring, between Cold Spring and Conroe, the pattern is still the same. It doesn't matter how far away you are right here. It's going to, as you're moving further east, it's going to increase. As you move further west, it's going to decrease. But the profile is much the same. But what happens is, what's neat about this is you get water every month on average. Now, having said that, I will say that we also have a fairly high degree of variability, but on average, we're looking pretty good. In most of these areas, like in Conroe and Cold Spring, we're looking at about 4 inches of rain per month. 4 times 12 is 48 inches. So that works really well. Okay, so how much water can I collect off my roof in Conroe, Texas? Well, average rainfall is 48 inches. If we have a house roof area of about 2,000 square feet, in a 1-inch rain, you can collect 1,000 gallons. Pretty cool, pretty neat. So if you have 48 inches of rain, that's 48,000 gallons. And that's quite good. So looking at the chart, looking at the formula for this, we have our amount of rainfall in inches and our conversion of gallons per square foot of surface area that we're catching the rainfall. This is the catchment area. And then our system efficiency. Our system efficiency is only at 80% efficiency because we know we have a lot of different roof types. Not all of the water can be recovered that comes off of a roof. Some of it overshoots the gutters. Some of it's absorbed. Some of it drips off. Maybe the rain gutters have leaks. Maybe as the water is transferred from rain gutter to a downspout, it splashes out and doesn't really get in. So this is low. Now, if you tighten up, change your surfaces and change your, check over your efficiency of your system. If you increase that, you may bump this up to 90% efficiency or even 95%. It's quite good. So you can increase this 48,000 a year pretty easily if you're in the Conroe area. Now we do have some incentives. We have the sales tax exemption. You can look that up online, Texas Tax Code 151.355. It exempts rainwater harvesting equipment, services, and supplies from sales tax. Now some other cities have actual additional benefits to encourage people to collect rainwater. Not so in Conroe. Maybe it's something that's going to come up, but we haven't seen it yet. Also, House Bill 645, passed by the legislature in 2003, says that the HOAs cannot keep you from putting in a rainwater system, rainwater collection system. They can tell you you need to hide it. You need to put it in your backyard, behind the fence, behind foliage, behind a screen, things like that. But they can't tell you can't have one. So it's something to keep in mind. But be pleasant when you go into them. If they say, no, you can't do it, well, don't argue with them. Just show them and talk with them and educate them. They're on your side. They're trying to do the right thing. And hopefully you'll have a smooth, somebody has already paved the way before you and you'll have a smooth time of it. So is it legal? Well, it depends on the state you're in. In Texas, yes. In fact, you're encouraged to harvest rainwater in Texas. because we feel it helps people understand how beneficial and how important rainwater is to our future resources. So you're encouraged to do that, but you need to make sure that you follow the state, county, city, and your HOA or POA, property organization, property owners group. Make sure that you're following those orders or their guidelines, because otherwise they're going to get upset. And for more information, you can go to these websites below. I'm not going to go through these websites. You'll have this information in your handouts, and you can go to it on your own. Now let's get to the actual activity of rainwater harvesting. This is a great example, actually. It looks kind of silly, but it's a good example. You've got a person here that's standing in the rain, sort of. He's collecting rainwater, and he's got a tube that comes down through here, and that is a way to distribute it. And then he's got a way to store it. This could also be an application of some kind. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. Works quite well. And so I thought, well, this is kind of silly, but it looks good and it illustrates what we're going to do. But does it really work? Are there actually places around here that have an upside down umbrella? So I've kept my eyes open, and over the years I have found at least one. It's quite a nice upside down umbrella system as far as these things go. You've got these upside down umbrellas, and you've got a hollow tube coming down right here that comes in to this catchment system. And it goes into here, and then it flows out gently into the dry creek beds. So in the wintertime, it catches water and uses it to feed the plants, and controls erosion. It slows the water down and gives it time to soak in. In the summertime, they say this is very beneficial because it provides shade. Well, it does provide shade, but anybody who's been in Phoenix, Arizona in August knows that it doesn't mean it's any cooler, or maybe perhaps a little bit cooler, but it's still hotter than Hades out there. So we're going to talk about passive collection and distribution and active, and that's coming up as we go. Our passive rainwater harvesting is set up our objective here is to slow water movement to reduce erosion, and it's also to reduce sedimentation, flooding, and pollution, to provide more time for the water to slow down as it moves across these surfaces and be absorbed into those surfaces, into the soil, and so it can be used by plants, can recharge your groundwater system, can benefit. What's involved? Well, you got a rooftop, or it could be a driveway, or it could be a parking area. The water comes flooding off there, or comes flushing off into some sort of a ditch, or in this case, a rain gutter, and then it moves down into, in this case, a rain garden, such as this one. We're going to talk about that: rooftops, parking areas, streets. Distribution. The distribution here is through these downspouts. And then landscaping to make use of this, and we're going to go over these here in the next few minutes. Rain gardens, very simple concept, just a shallow scalloped area that holds water. You want to check this with your hose before you start getting too excited about it. Scallop it out and then fill it with water and see how it does. If it's still water in that place, in that downspout or that depression, if there's still standing water in it after 3 days, you don't want to do that, because you're going to have a pool that's going to breed mosquitoes, and you might have some other things in there too that might not be good for you. But if it does drain and you can make use of it, then put in some native grasses and plants that will grow easily, that aren't dependent on a lot of water. And when you first put them in, they'll look kind of bare. It'll look something like this. And then after 3 or 4 months, it'll start filling in. And in another 3 or 4 months, you'll have flowers, and it'll look nice. And those flowers will attract bees and butterflies and some birds as well. You'll also get crickets and frogs in there. It'll make a nice little ecosystem it's much better than a gravel wash that it was here before. Using the same idea, here they've taken the gutter, or the curbs that are around this roundabout, and they put holes in them, or they put trenches in them, the depressions, so the water can flow into this. And notice that it's actually lower in the center than it is on the edges. And right up here, you can barely see it. There's a brown drain. That's a storm drain. So water comes down the street, it flows into this area, it fills up with water. This is actually raised up about 6 or 8 inches. So it'll raise up until it floods into this. In the meantime, what you'll have will be the water, the overflow water that's too full will flow into the storm drain and be carried off to wherever they plan for it to go for their stormwater management program. This is important because you don't want this flowing out of here after it floods in, because it'll start eroding and carrying off your nutrients and fertilizers that you plant around these plants. And mulch too. Mulch floats, and it'll carry that off as well. And you don't want to do that. Here's another version of that. It's basically a curb that's been, they've opened up the curbing, and they have a lower area here where the water comes down the curb, and when a storm comes in, flows into this lower area. When it fills up and no more water can flow into it, then it continues on down to the storm drain where it's taken out for their storm management program. Water will stay in here until it's soaked in, or it will continue to flow out. Notice how dry the grass looks out here. This is already reaping the benefit of this rainwater. And you can see, even though they have much higher demand than the grass does, they seem to be growing quite well. This group has the right idea that you've got a parking lot and the water flows down into this planted area. But you can see how parched it looks, how dried out. I don't think it's in Phoenix, but it could be. But I think it's probably not, and it's just a case of, notice this drain right here. This is the drain that's used to carry the water up. If they put a lip on this about 3 inches high, it would be much better, because then the water would sit in here and be absorbed. If it went above 3 inches, before it could flow out of here back onto the parking area, it would flow into the drain. So it would be very beneficial. It would slow down the water, let it be absorbed. The plants would make use of it, and it would look something like this. Here, this water is slowed down. You've got a lip on this drain so that the water doesn't just flow directly in, eroding and removing a lot of the good material. But instead, it sits there for a little bit and has a chance to soak in. The plants love it. This is in the Botanical Gardens in St. Louis, Missouri. Great place. This is actually in the parking area, and it's an arroyo or a canyon that comes down across the structure. They have bridges going across, and you notice all these holes in the parking area on the curbing. Same idea. The water flows in here and then flows in, fills this up, and when this area fills up, when it gets too full, before it goes over the top of the dam, it's going to go over the top into this drain. And this drain basically channels the water underground into the next layer or into the next level. And it does this all the way down through the parking structure. So it's cut back the erosion. It's slowed the water down. So these bald cypress and all these grasses here just love it. And you can see how everything looks. It looks really well. Some red berries or flowers for plants and birds. Very nice. Same idea in construction. Here you've got this larger building, and water comes down off the downspouts from the roof area and goes into this area here that's a swale, and it's planted. They put some nice plants in here, and this actually slows the water down so it doesn't erode off until it fills up and then overflows into this drain. Then it'll be carried off underground. There won't be any erosion, and that's important, because if there were erosion, and this is talking about the maintenance of these structures too, you need to be sure that this is kept clean. Make sure there are no grocery store plastic bags plugging it up, because if it starts overflowing and eroding, it's going to erode all the way back up underneath the house or underneath the structure here and cause some damage. They may have to evacuate. They're certainly going to do some structural redesign, and it's going to be very expensive and pricey. So this is included in the construction costs for the building and the maintenance. It should be part of it. Shouldn't be just happen. They shouldn't just tell people, well, you just have to keep an eye on it. No, they should have an actual maintenance program for something like this to make sure that doesn't happen, doesn't get plugged up. Other things you can do is add a downspout diffuser. If you have a front of your house, basically you can join the downspouts like this. If you have leaf screens on the top. In this house, there are leaf screens going across here. There's a downspout here, and there's a downspout here, and it's just connected across. This is about 35 to 40 feet and about 25 feet this way. Works very well. And basically what they've done is they put holes in this 3-inch line, raised it up about 4 inches off the ground, and there are holes at the very bottom and holes then part way up, halfway up the line, or halfway up the side of the tubing. And as water comes in, it all drains out, so you don't have standing water in there that mosquitoes can get into and cause problems. You also don't have a chance for dirt to pile up in there, or roots to go in and start growing. You may get some small debris coming off that washes through your leaf screens, but that's okay. You probably clean this but once every 2 or 3 years, and that's all. By the way, this is something that I experimented with. This is our house in Conroe, Texas. It works extremely well, and this is shortly after it was finished, and you can see it looks pretty bare, but right now it's pretty full. A lot of plants there. You can set this also up on a rain barrel, And basically that's what we've done here. Now, if you don't have a downspout at both sides or another rain barrel over here, then what you're going to want to do is set up a cap on the end. Put some holes in the top of the cap right here so it gives you some back pressure so the water comes in from either side or comes in. It pushes it into these holes and lets it flow out. And that way you'll get good flow all along this area. Make sure the slope is away from the house or structure, not into it, because you don't want to saturate and flood your structure. You can do some other things like add a mechanical assist. This is very innovative. This fellow came down from Illinois and he looked at our rainwater harvesting system. He says, "Hey, I can do that. I've got a basement. I can use some of those sump pumps in the summertime, and I can set those up, and I can." That's what he has in there. This is a sump pump. It has a float on it that when the float starts floating, it knows there's water in this barrel, and it turns it on. Now he can either run it either this way or that way. This way goes to the back of his house where he's got a rain barrel, a rain tank, and this goes to the sprinkler that transfers the water from the downspout to an area that needs more water than it's receiving from the storm or from the rainfall. Maybe he's got a different type of plant in that area, but this works really well, very effective. You can also set up a little catch basin where you have, even though you have gutters like this, you may also have a problem because it shoots over the gutters in these roof valleys, and that's what he set up. So he can come out and dip into this with a pitcher and take that in, or a coffee can for that matter, take it into his house and use that for watering his plants. And the overflow, as it fills up and starts, rather than just spilling out on the pavement here, it will overflow and comes into this fern bed that he's got set up for it. Quite nice. Contour farming, that also works. Instead of just putting pods of plants on the side of a hill, make it a berm that continues on with about a 2-degree slope going down it. The water will flow down the hill when it rains, will be caught by this berm and then move laterally at a slow stage or slow movement. And during that slowness, it'll be absorbed into the berm and water all these plants. It works very well. These are a little bit different. These are like concrete pavers, but they're just the opposite. They're concrete blocks. You can see an outline of them. They're about 24 inches by 12 inches or 18 inches by 12. And the idea here is that you put these on a gravel bed, work them in so they're level, add some sand, add some good topsoil, and then in the center of each area, put a plug of St. Augustine grass in there, water and fertilizer like you would your lawn. You can even mow it. It's not a problem. Here's a walkway. Here's the parking area. Works very well. There are also pervious or porous surfaces permeable surfaces that can transfer water. Here's a special concrete that will actually let water pass through it. Now, there's a concern here because as as dust and dirt get on the surface, and then they have rainfall falling after it, it's going to, those fine clays and everything are going to sift down through these openings, and they're going to plug them up. So about once or twice a year, you're going to have to go out there with a scrubber, literally a bristle surface scrubber, and like something set up with a flushing system to flush and scrub that concrete. Now, if you want to do that instead of power washing, that's up to you. But this is more work than I would want to get involved with. But it is an option that's available for people. And you can see this in Conroe at the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, not far from our extension office in North Conroe. Terrace gardens are great. We recommend people look at these. There's a lot more that can be done with terrace gardens than you think. And so here's a terrace garden. There are 6 of them actually set up on the back of this house. This house was built in 1935. This is one of those drought areas for the summertime in Berkeley, California. It's where my wife is from, and this is a house she grew up in. And these terraces were put in when the house was built. And they've had a variety. They've had vegetables gardens. They've had children's garden. They've had plants. They've had fruit. They've had a lot of things going on there. Sometimes they just neglected it and it would just sit there. But nonetheless, it was doing its job. It's slowing water down. It's avoiding erosion so you don't have a problem with it eroding back up underneath the house. And that's the key. Now, these were built over 70 years ago, and they're still good today. They're still being used today. New people that moved into it have 2 young children, and they have some of these set up to use as play areas for them. Works very well. This is more of what you find in Texas. It's kind of interesting. You'll have a slope, and they'll just put a uh, they'll just continue the planting as a slope. They'll put evergreen plants in here that work very well, and they don't need much water. So you can have a sprayer that sprays it and gets enough water that way, and just throw some fertilizer on there, and it's fine, works well. But if you made this into a terrace, and it works extremely well. This is, and I didn't, this is something I built. I put in, I was describing it to my wife, and she had trouble visualizing it, but it gave her a lot more opportunities to plant things that would flower and things that she would like to see, rather than things that the landscapers would put, because they knew it would stay and it would be green, but it did not necessarily flower or look pretty. So with these, and you can learn how to do these rock walls online. There's so much information in YouTube videos today. It's just really impressive. My problem is I get sidetracked and learn how to do things that I probably shouldn't have any business studying or getting into. No, it's not brain surgery or anything, but like rock walls, it's fascinating to me. So, and this one went in and it turned out very well. And of course, we set up a drip irrigation system within it, and so it works nicely. Now you can get some other things. As you walk around, you'll see examples of people having the right idea, but not quite the right execution. Here's a house I walked by in our area. The magnolia here is very nice. The bottle brush looks very nice. This oak tree looks pretty sparse and doesn't look like it's grown very much. And the same with this magnolia. Look at how few the leaves are and how small the leaves are compared to this one. Well, the water downspouts are here coming off the roof, and they flow into the beds that are next to the house where these plants are also, these trees are also located. Now you come into the lawn area where these trees are. Notice the tree rings go all the way around it. So when water flows across, goes downhill across these, what happens when it hits this tree ring? It's rejected. It's kept out of the tree's area, tree's root area. So it moves around it. Now what they should do is they should open these up so that they're like a funnel, like, come to me, water, come to me. And so the water will come in and slow down. Now, just about a couple blocks away, further down the street, built the same time, but a different approach. These are trees that were planted on the slope, but notice the tree rings are set up so that they're actually below the surface of the lawn, above, so the water can flow in, and then it levels off, it flattens off. You can see how flat it is here. It's not sloped. Water slows down and is absorbed around the tree, and then it can flow off. And look how green the trees are. Looks really well, does really well. The same thing here around these slopes. This is a slight slope. It's open up here, and we've decreased the slope, we've leveled it, we've made it flatter. So water flows in the open side, slows down when it flattens out, and it gives it time to be absorbed by these trees, which need more water than the grass does, of course. Just like this. Basically, you have these crescent-shaped landscape holding areas that are pulled in, and it's an easy way to add water to your landscape. And you can download these. These are free of charge from University of Arizona. Just look for rainwater harvesting or harvesting rainwater. This is the city of Tucson. This is an edited version of this, a smaller version of this. So go for the biggie. There's a lot of good information out there. The lady's name is Patricia Waterfall. She does a great job. And this is something, when I first saw this, I thought, abstract art, yes? No. These are terraces in Yunnan province, China. Rice fields, absolutely amazing to me. And it shows what you can do if you really set your mind to it. Really a good, impressive job. So now we're going to active rainwater harvesting. And we have basically very similar to what we do for the passive system, except we move it into a storage area and we try to clean it up. We have screens and we have other methods we're going to use that you'll read about in part 2, or that you'll hear about in part 2. And this is a nice example of an active rainwater harvesting system. And this was actually a house for sale in Austin, Texas in 2010. And each house in this subdivision comes with its own 2,000-gallon tank. And this is used for collecting rainwater. It's used for irrigation, drip irrigation, and also for flushing the commodes in the house. This is an energy-efficient system, and it's a great idea. They've done a great job with it. If you get a chance, and they have some open houses up there, take a look at them. They're quite good. This is a good example of how a rainwater system, active system, could look or should look. You've got a catchment area, some hard surface, goes into a leaf screen where you're removing the coarse material. You have a first flush diverter where the smaller fines and dust moves into it, just like when you wash your car. When you first spray it with water, you get all this brown gunk coming off here, all that dust. that's what this does. It catches this first flush. You don't want that going into your tank. When this fills up, by that time, then you can move into your tank with cleaner water. In this case, these are 500-gallon storage tanks each. Overflow line, this is necessary. You want to make sure that it has an overflow line that's hinged and preventing critters and mosquitoes from flying up inside, and they will do that. Then you need an air vent, so you have the air or the tank will breathe in and out as water flows out or flows in. Tank gauge, so you know how big it is or how full it is. And this is, at this point, we want to say caution, caution. Tanks are heavy. Water weighs about 8.3 pounds per gallon. Be sure they're stable and cannot be pulled over. And watch for erosion around the base. Make sure it's very stable. Lock or bolt the tank access to keep children out and animals. Also, you'll need to screen all the openings to keep out mosquitoes and critters. We already touched on that. Check water quality. If the bacteria level is too high, it's going to start smelling and looking bad. Go to the TCEQ website that we talked about earlier on that website list. Go there and see what they recommend. That may change. That's why we don't put their current recommendation up. It can change with time. You want to make sure you've got the most recent version. Public water safety. Do not connect your system to public water. The risk for contamination is too high, and it could make a lot of people sick. If certain things are violated or have an accident, don't do that. If the water may be used for emergencies for drinking, make sure that the tanks are of food grade quality. You can go and look at a Boy Scout catalog shop, and they have all sorts of camping and also water purification. Take a look at what they do. It works very well. I've lived 2 weeks up in Philmont on a scout camp up there, just using water in cisterns and in mud puddles and creeks and streams for 2 weeks. None of us got sick. It worked out very well. Start at a small scale. Bird baths, potted plants in and out of the house work very well. Here's a bird bath. You can also use it for, you'll find butterflies and bees will also hang around it. Here's a wildlife watering station. This is kind of a standalone system. Water lands on the roof, rain lands on the roof, and it drains into this trough, which then goes into this tank, and then it slowly feeds a watering area here for animals and birds. Rain barrels come in all sorts of sizes and in cost. Some of these are pretty expensive. These are probably about 150 to 200 each. Probably about the same, but they have different shapes and sizes depending on what you're interested in. This is a little difficult to stand up, so you're going to have to set up some sort of structure or dig a hole for it to sit down into a basin, sit down into the ground to support it. Just make sure it doesn't tip over. This is kind of interesting, a portable system. If you're going to a campground and you want to make sure you can collect water, if you can adapt your tents to a collection system on a roof, like a rooftop or something like this, if you have something that's a roof roof to your tent or a top part of your tent that's raised up, you might be able to direct that water and to catch it here. You can use that for washing. I wouldn't use it for drinking or brushing your teeth, but you can use it for washing pots and pans and cleaning up if you get too mucky or muddy. Works pretty well. You also have some more fancier things like this. Also, you can find it, they have nice cedar covers on them. Here's one that's disguised as a rock. That also works. I'm a retired geologist, so I kind of like to see that. But again, these are getting more and more pricey and expensive. If you don't have rain gutters, they have attachments that you can add to a roof valley, add a little basin, like have a little galvanized basin like this, and at the bottom of that, as the water comes off, it'll go into that basin, and you'll have something like a downspout start on it, and it'll just feed with a rain chain down into your rain barrel. Works pretty well, just like this. It'll look just like that. You'll have a screen on it to keep out the bugs and the debris. It works very well. Now, you can also paint these and decorate them. That's a lot of fun if you have kids. I don't recommend putting your head in the barrels while you clean them. This looks kind of funny, but it could also be dangerous if the barrels have some chemical in them, and you don't want to use those anyway. If it's food grade, I can see maybe if it's like strawberry syrup or something like that. If it's soy sauce, I wouldn't recommend it. It might not be too fragrant, too nice a fragrance anyway. You can also decorate the smaller barrels. These are 55-gallon barrels. Here we're putting a base coat on them. And then we have good artists at the Master Gardener programs. You'd be amazed at what people can do with their artwork. It's just beautiful. These are our 2 wildlife watering stations getting ready to go out. You can do rainfall. Here's a drip. Sorry. Here's a a rain barrel set up outside. Make sure that this area is stable. And I would try to attach this to the house or to the structure to rent that. Here's another food grade barrel. Now, you want to make sure if you don't have anything like that, make sure you can also go to the store and get something like this. It's a trash can, and you put a little spigot here. You can do that pretty easily. Cut a hole in the top so your rainwater comes off your downspout into here. This is about like a window screen, and they clamp this trash can lid to it. It actually have latches on it so it stays on, it doesn't blow off. But you can use those latches because the screen is really thin. You can use these latches to hook into that, and it'll keep it from moving. This will keep the debris in place. It also keeps the mosquitoes out of there. This is something for hooking up I guess an overflow valve or overflow line to it. That would work. And again, make sure that this is stable. You can see this is on a slope. If this should start rolling and it was full of water, each of these weighs, even they're 50 gallons, say, and you got 8 pounds per gallon, you're looking at over 400 pounds. If this starts rolling down a hill, it's like a small Volkswagen. Maybe not quite like a Volkswagen, but it's got a lot of weight, and it can do some damage if it hits a fence or a car or your house for that matter. So be careful. This is a class on rainwater harvesting that Master Gardeners are working with. They're getting ready to attach this. They have straps that they're going to put in place and attach that to the structure, the shed structure. Notice that they have a wide screen on the top here. Just a word of caution. If you have a wide screen, sunlight's going to come into it. And what do you have when you have sunlight and water? You have algae. And they're going to have to clean this rain barrel at some point because of that. Here's a house that was built into the area, where you didn't have a lot of groundwater. In fact, they drilled 5 or 6 wells out here. They couldn't find any. And so the new owners, when they bought the land, they put in rain tanks and collected off this roof and off the roof of their house. And this works very, very well for them. They use this for drinking water with a sanitizing system, as well as for their landscape. This is just for irrigation for landscape. It comes down and then flows into this big covered reservoir, or this big river reservoir here. It would be nice if they had a cover on this, because you're going to get a lot of evaporation coming off this, which is going to be a problem. If instead of just having a plain green tank out here or a black tank, you might want to cover it with something like cedar strips or cedar fencing. These work very well. This is the example out here at the extension. This is a solar panel. We have a battery charger, we have a battery, and we have a voltage regulator in here and a valve that opens and closes depending on how you set your timer. Works very well. You could use that in a fishing cabin or in a hunting cabin, and you could grow your herbs and spices that you might want to have for when you visit. They have different size tanks. These are Slimline Tanks. They're set up in different areas. Here's another type of tank, not quite the one like the one before, but notice that because it's on a slope and going downhill, you'll have enough energy in the water because of the height. You can actually use this for watering small areas. And it looks like they're doing some good xeriscaping anyway, so they're not going to use much. Here's a rain tank on the side of the house, so it's you can't be seen from the front, but it also is collecting water from the sides and the front. This is the front of the house out here, and the water is coming around off this downspout in here. Now here you can see the leaf screen and the first flush diverter we talked about earlier. Here's in Austin, Texas. They have 2 different size tanks. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes in part 2, but it works very well. You can use different size tanks if you put a snorkel in it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Lower Colorado River Authority or Association, and here's the Wall Elementary, and here's a kennels. All 3 of these areas are using rainwater tanks to help with their day-to-day operation. Here they're using it for landscape watering, for bringing flowers into the area for the birds and bees and insects and butterflies, for the kids' education. They can see it. Here they're using it for demonstration of their river watering system, their dam system. Here they're using it for cleaning the pens for the animals that they maintain there. You can have underground rainwater harvesting collection systems, but if you have a high water table, and a lot of our areas here do because we have such a high rainfall amount, up to 60 inches of rain per year on average. If this is waterlogged up here and this is empty, it's going to float. This water is just going to pop it out right at the surface like a submarine coming out of the Atlantic. And it's going to pop up and it's going to break off all these fittings that you have here. It's going to be really expensive to repair. So make sure you have a civil engineer guiding the construction or installation to make sure it's done properly. And this is a rain pillow. You don't see many of these. Here they have it set up under the crawl space of a house. The problem with these is that we do have some big rats in Texas. We also have squirrels, a bushy-tailed rat. By some people call them bushy-tailed rats, but they're very curious. They're very inquisitive, and they're liable to gnaw through these and see what's in them. Particularly if there's a temperature difference, they'll just gnaw a few holes here and there. But over time, it's going to drain this, and then you're going to have a mess under here. So I would not do this, but it's up to you. If you find a way to keep the animals out, you could do that. And that's the end of part 1. Part 2 will be coming up in a few minutes. We're going to change the video and go from there. Again, if you have some questions, write them down and give them to your class coordinator so they can get those to Kim Pierce at Montgomery County Extension, and we'll answer them and get back to you. Thank you very much.